to get a couple things off of it.
That's not how lists work.
Ticked off a couple today, didn't I?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 1st meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of exits around the room while you're partying. Just joking. And now join me as we salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank everyone for joining us. We're down one member tonight and hope Mr. Veith is feeling better shortly. And hope that Ms. Polidoro is having a wonderful time in Italy. The first item on our agenda is carriage trails or Crofton Mews. May I get a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The applicants are not here tonight. This is a hearing to extend the site plan approval as well as actually authorize a new special use permit. To reiterate, we were not aware, but the original special use permit lapsed about 10 years ago. So we've been extending this without what it also needed. And in the meantime, what we're basically waiting for now is a side-by-side comparison of the latest plans that include changes based on mitigation requirements from the DEC, but to ensure that no other changes have happened because sometimes data layers are turned off, whatever. So Bonnie's going to undertake that for us, and when we get a clean bill of health, we'll be ready to move, I think, on this then. Any comments from consultants of this application? Board members?
No.
Would anyone in the audience like to speak about this? I thought not. May I get a motion to adjourn this to May 15th?
So moved. Second.
Before we get a vote, Bonnie, is that enough time for you to work on this?
Yes,
okay.
thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is what our friends in front of us are here for tonight. We get a motion to reopen the public hearing for the CIA project, or the hotel and villas on the CIA parcel.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We had an extensive new submission made tonight during the interim when we didn't see the applicants. So let me turn it over to Mr. Zarin and team to see what you want to highlight.
Okay, well, good evening. Good to be back, Haven't seen each other for a couple of meetings. It's been a real vacuum in at least my life. So per the cover letter, Michael, that you referred to, we tried to submit a comprehensive response to each of the comments contained in the numerous letters and board comments that we received, hopefully in advance of receiving soon conditional site plan approval, perhaps at the May 15th meeting if possible. We hope we've covered most, if not all, of the substantive issues. I know a sensitive topic is we also made full additional submissions of most of our documents, and that was obviously made, as hopefully a final set drawings. That was what was asked of us, to update everything and try to consolidate and make that type of submission. So is why our submission was so voluminous. We're going to try to address, there were a couple of specific comments that we were asked to address specifically. The first was our meetings with the fire district, Roseville Fire District, and I'm going to let Joe Platti discuss that. Our TERP Consulting, we've met with them 3 times. We've gone back and forth, I think, pretty confident. We've made all the required modifications and analysis that they had asked us for. We tried to include all the information, both on a consolidated figure that Joe will go over, as well as the specifications and dimensions for the roads were all in the site plan drawings, or really on the one site plan drawing that they've received electronically, and we sent them another copy electronically, as well as the town. So I'll ask Joe to just touch on that and let you see and get you comforted that we really did spend a considerable amount of time trying to be responsive and making the necessary modifications and providing necessary information. I know there's still some questions on the lighting grid, and I'm going to ask Michael Gotti to go through some of those and talk about that. There was some also issues raised about the construction phasing and possibly the distinction with the 5-acre disturbance phasing and their relation. So I'll ask Chris to quickly go through that and clarify anything on that. Finally, we did receive a comment letter today from Bonnie. I think we've gone through it very quickly. I think Michael, Gotti, a lot of it was the lighting. I think Michael will be able to cover a lot of that. If not, we'll obviously between now and the 15th touch on anything. I don't think there's any substantive
Adequacy of parking is also inside Bonnie's comment.
and the parking that either we'll address tonight or we'll address next day or two. And I think anything else, respectfully, probably can be a condition, but we'll do our best to touch on those. There was a little bit of confusion. We've gotten all our, pretty much many to Pete's. We're rounded third base on our involved agencies. In fact, we made it home with the Army Corps of Engineer we received. We got a DEC permit. We got our SHPO permits. We've got, we've got pretty much everything. We've received 2 sets of comments from the DOT. We had a call with the DOT. They think we're pretty close. We received comments from Department of Health, 2 sets of comments from Department of Health. We had a call with them the other day on an issue. So we're pretty much rounding third on those, and I think we'll be in really good shape. Certainly pretty soon, if those are any conditions. There was a comment and some confusion. The DEC permit cited that they based their findings of the permit on April 7th, 2023 drawings. Whatever, but the point is, it's the same, pretty much the same exact location and grading plan for those drawings for the current drawings, which were the only issues in the DEC's jurisdiction. So the issue that was before them, the grading plan with respect to the pedestrian bridge within the 50-foot of the Marici Kill, same on both drawings, and those were the only issues. So I'll turn it over to. Oh, by the way, I should want a couple of comments, Bonnie and yours on the subdivision comments. That plat is pretty much, deed has been done, signed Victoria, Pete reviewed it, and we're ready for signature on the plat and the deed. We incorporated all the comments in your resolution. Pete and Victoria went through it, and the CIA signed it, and we're signing it, and we'll present it to you. Once everyone signs it, and we record it, then we'll change the bulk tables, because we can't do it until it's recorded and official. So we're right there. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Joe's Terp Consulting, we brought on specifically to deal fire compliance issues. Joe's been back and forth with the fire district and at all the meetings, calls that we've had with them. So let me turn it over to Joe. You'll see.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Joe Platti with Terp Consulting. I got involved in the project probably a little over a year ago to start the process of discussing fire department access for the site. And the documents that were submitted a few weeks ago are sort of a culmination of around a year or so's worth of work on progressing the design, and also a handful of meetings and document transactions with the Roosevelt Fire District, and a handful or so of very specific comments they gave us that we incorporated into the set. The document that Michael Gatti has on the screen here is essentially a consolidation of a few of the pieces of information related to fire department access and some context to help the fire department review and understand the characteristics of the buildings and the site, so they can better understand it. None of this information is really, it's intended to be conveying some of the information that's in the civil set in signed and sealed documents. So this is a consolidation of other information. It clarifies that all the buildings are sprinklered on site, that the types of sprinkler systems we have, some information related to dimensions, and locations of hydrants. A lot of this information is strewn about on a handful of different sets of documents. There's a lot of information that the fire code wants to be considered, and it all kind of can't fit on one document. We don't even have it all on here. It is strewn about in the civil set. And so this just kind of gives some context for them in reviewing it. It also basically states that the roads and the distances to hydrants, everything complies with the code requirements and our previous discussions with the Roosevelt Fire District. The bulk of the information, like I said, is in the civil set, and that has information, all the information related to complying with Section 504 and Appendix D, including the sloping of roads, the widths of roads, the distance to hydrants, truck maneuvering with an auto-turn the auto-turn drawing, which we recently received updated truck information from the fire department, so we've incorporated that. They had requested that we include entering and exiting the site a bunch of different directions, so we've updated our documents. They asked us to remove an island on the southeast corner of the site to facilitate operations in that area. We removed that. The northwest corner of the site was somewhat of a convoluted path for hose operations from the location where the fire truck was, so we were able to sort of sacrifice some of the landscaping there and extend the road another 50 feet or so to significantly reduce the distance for hoses to the villas in that area, and it also creates much more of a straight shot to those areas, so we were able to accommodate that as well. The civil set also has the few turning radii on there, and other bits of information that are relevant to them. I think there's some lighting locations, so, and we've included some criteria in there related to things that have not been resolved yet, like trees. So we are limiting those things like gates that have not been resolved and designed yet. We will have a security gate, but it will comply with those requirements, so.
And we included those as notes in the civil drawings, the canopies, the pruning, so that any trucks can get through the roads with the tree canopies. And just to make clear, all that information, all the information Joe mentioned, has been provided to the fire district for probably close to almost 3 weeks. We met with them, we wanted to get it to them sufficiently in advance of this meeting, and like Joe said, they're in several drawings, but we've notified to them, we've provided them with the site plan on the civil set they've had for months, and we sent them another copy electronically. They have, that shows all the dimensions, as Joe mentioned. That figure 1, they've had for weeks. We
This
modified.
is not something that we see in our sets, I don't believe, is it? This is just intended for the fire department.
It was part of the submittal.
Yeah.
Was it?
It was included
You have
as
it.
a separate document in our submittal to you, to give you a copy of what we submitted to the fire department.
Not numbers,
That's it.
Michael, number 7 in the cover letter.
What's the net number on the
Submission to the
plan?
Roosevelt Fire Department dated April 8, 2024.
So the answer is that it was not submitted because you submitted one copy. My question was, is it part of the plan set? If it's separate, then it's not part of the plan set. That was my question. That's all.
Take a step back. The overall plan that's on,
Please use the microphone, sorry.
This is detailed.
the overall plan that's on the screen now was submitted to the fire department to kind of give an overview, a consolidation of the various plans that are in the set that you have. These are representative of the fire hydrants around our water and utility plan. Go ahead.
No, I understand. My question.
We understood what this is.
My question is can you number it and include it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the final set?
It's
I
not
think good
included in the
information
final
to
set.
have.
That was
Okay,
that was the
I'm sorry.
question.
We
It's a simple
talked
question.
about that earlier.
We talked about this before you came in, whether or not it was on the spreadsheet, the 3 sheets
We-
for the maneuvering, they're all in the plan set, but this one is not.
I know what it is you've taken stuff that's relevant to them and pulled them from various sheets and put it onto one sheet. I get that.
Okay.
It was a very simple question. Was this submitted as part of the plan set? No, it was separate.
Not as part of the plan set.
Thank you. Should it be? Yes?
Well, the one
This is way
benefit,
for Tad.
I was going to say, the one benefit is that it has notes on it about NFPA standards, and so it might be just useful to have, but.
Right. It's
That's
just
what I'm thinking,
planning
for tax
board.
purposes.
It's useful.
We put it
Yeah,
in.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Unless there's any questions to Joe, turn it over to Michael, and anything else on the fire?
Is this, oh, now it's working. There we go. All right, I'll dive into the lighting a little bit. There were a series of comments on the first set of responses we had gotten from you guys. So it just in kind of general, it's still a very large site, as we all know, and trying to accommodate the photometrics on a site like this. The overall set of drawings was confusing. We apologize for that. So the latest set we've compartmentalized, and that's why we have now 8 or 9 sheets. You still have to zoom in to look at these numbers. The numbers are tight. I spoke with the lighting designers this week and just wanted to make sure that I was clear for you guys to understand how we went about the photometrics on this site. One is the computers now can lay a tighter grid or a looser grid onto a topo map like we have here. We've chosen about a 7-foot grid. So, Michael, I think you had asked that question before, like what does the grid mean? It's basically an individual point throughout the entire site. So there's thousands, tens of thousands of points here that the computer is monitoring. So just to go back before I get into kind of the details of that, there were some fixtures in the schedule originally that we couldn't find on the site. Again, apologies, big site, not making excuses, we should have that right, but now we do. The individual light fixtures that you might see in the legend, you'll find on the master set. So all of that stuff has been cleaned up. We also noticed that there were some very clear anomalies in the numbers. I'm going to try to explain some of that. There are still some. And the computer does that.
You have to explain that.
I will.
You can't approve light candles of 70. It's just.
Totally understood. I think the highest one right now, and I'll zoom in here because I made my little yellow thing. I mean, you can kind of see here, these are bollards. These are very simple residential bollards, right? And you can kind of see that right underneath the bollard itself, and if you noticed on the detail of the bollard, it's a post, and the light is actually on one side of the post. The computer is so exact that if your point is directly under that, you could get up to 18 to 20 to 25 foot candles right underneath the light itself. But you're going to notice here that not 7 feet away, it goes all the way down to 4, and then another 7 feet, it's at .05.
Why is it still 20 or 25 foot candles?
Because it's directly.
Even that close, why is it that bright? Why are you
It's
using such a
directly
high
under the
number?
light. I'm being told, Michael, and we can show this any way you like us to show it. The reality of the computer is that directly under that light fixture, which is 30 inches above the ground, you're going to get that hot of a spot. Right there, but literally 3-4 feet away, it has dissipated that light. Now, keep in mind, too, all the fixtures we have here are shielded light fixtures on a residential, in a residential thing. Our goal, when we were designing this, is a quiet residential approach to the lighting overall. Our goal is your goal. We're not looking for this to be a parking lot at Walgreens. This is about us creating something and an ambiance that we all want. So, again, yes, there's some anomalies, like I said here. We will fix that. We can do anything you like. The reality of this is that the average lighting on this site is incredibly low, and it's intentional. It's a design.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop for a moment.
Yeah, no
Your
worries.
response, the repeated response over and over again was this was measured on a grid and that it's not supposed to be to a specific light fixture. Now you're telling me that it is to a specific light fixture, so which is it?
That's the note. You're referring to the note that was
The
on.
10-time note in
Yeah,
responses,
that
over and over and over
We're
again.
going to fix it. Understood. It was confusing, and I
No, it says that it's not meant to be a specific fixture, but now you're telling me that it is. So
Yeah.
I need for you to
Well,
explain that
when we're
analogy.
looking at the points that are anomalies, the very high numbers, or the higher numbers than what actually is distributed as far as the foot candles are concerned, it is monitoring directly underneath the light fixture.
If it's monitoring under the same light fixture, why aren't they all producing the same foot candles of 68 or whatever it is?
Moves around the site. So if if the compute, where we've placed the lights on the model, if it's on on one of the points of the 7-foot grid, it's going to be there. And you can kind of see, like, right next to some of these bollards are very, very low numbers, right next to it. That means it's behind the post. That point happens to be behind the post, which is, go ahead.
Michael,
Yeah.
could you isolate that area and move the 7-foot? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And shift the grid just for that isolated area so that we could see what it will actually be.
Sure, yeah, yes, we could do that. It'd be an incredibly tedious task.
Or could you just, I mean, they should be able to tell us if you had that alone first. You know, never mind the grid, what
Yeah.
it's shedding in terms of foot candles.
Yeah.
So,
I-
because it's definitely, it's the SC, it's that bollard.
Yes, it's the ball.
I don't know why, but it's pretty obvious, the pattern. And there was one that
Yeah.
was like 66, and that
They-
seems like a big anomaly.
Yeah, the lighting designer explained that to me too, that because they're so close together, it's rare on this site plan, but those are the lights that are close together. In sometimes they overlap, they actually meet one from the other, and the computer does it. I keep mentioning the computer. If we didn't have the computer, we would do the old-fashioned way, and we would be giving you averages around the bollard, and you guys would say, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, he asked me if he should Photoshop out the higher numbers, and I said, well, that's not really fair either. Right? No, which, of course, if
Retract that statement, please.
No, I know, I'm telling you that, I said, no, don't do that. I said, leave it on here so I can try to explain to you what the realities are.
No.
Yeah, it wasn't Chris.
So you could, you could tell us what that would be in these rare instances where it occurs where the light is directly on the source.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, with the bollard.
The grid.
Is it taking into account topography? Is there
does.
something happening where
Yeah.
it's like
I got you.
6 inches off the ground instead of 3 feet off the ground that's creating the anomaly?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the bollard.
Somehow, right,
SC.
with the gradient
I
topography,
think it's on the
it's
sheet
showing
there.
up as if it's sitting on the ground.
SA. Yeah, SC, okay, so this doesn't have the photometrics on it.
Wait,
But I can get it.
microphone. Chris, microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry, oh,
The source is 24 inches from the ground, although it's set to the top 32, but when you look at so that was 8 inches, and so it's 24 inches from the bottom.
yeah, what I can do, Rob, is I can go to the manufacturer website and I can show you, they'll have a single photometric, very detailed, exactly how that thing gets distributed from that point. You'll see there's a hot spot directly under the light and that it dissipates very quickly. Again, these are shielded light fixtures. These are made for residential development. So, yeah, again, apologies, but yeah, like on another light fixture, you'll see.
I promise we're familiar with
Yeah, yeah.
bollards. We see these kinds of measurements all the time. The
Yeah.
problem is that yours are the only ones that are weird.
Well,
No offense, but that's it. Maybe you shouldn't be using this computer program because
Yeah.
it is not, remember also, please, the DC planning specifically talked about the lighting here and problems with it. They were more or less chastising us for not trying to do a better evaluation of the impacts of lighting across the river. You guys gave your response, but what we saw doesn't comport with the numbers that I'm seeing here. That's basically it, is we're not going to have, I don't think any of you want to do some crazy lighting either.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, I think to Rob's point, we can find the high numbers, and we can say in those areas, we've shifted the grid, and the numbers will change. So they'll be more in line with what you see here, which will be the product description layout of the photometrics right underneath those fixtures specifically.
But, Michael, am I missing something? And let me just jump in, take a layman's, and I might be totally wrong. If we're showing, if we have computer readings of, let's say, a whole line of bollard lights, and they're all 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, they're all at levels that you would expect them at.
We actually
And
don't
then there's
expect seven.
one-
We don't expect 7, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying. And then you have one anomaly. and what you're obviously
Wait, you have
concerned
many
about.
anomalies, and most of the anomalies, there's zero around it. This is not a consistent pattern of 2, 2, 2, 3, whatever. You have many anomalies, and they have, in many cases, nothing. Bonnie, this is correct, you saw it
Yeah.
too. There's 0 foot candles around it. That's why, again, maybe my brain is too pea-sized these days, but I can't wrap my head around what you're saying.
But then,
It's not-
okay,
maybe
but
that's not in
then
layman's
doesn't
terms.
doesn't the anomalies then, if we're using the same light features, and most of them are within the range that you're talking about from an impact visual, and then out of 15 or 20 of those, or 100 of those, we have so many, you've got a hotspot, an anomaly, using the same feature, the same
Source.
fixture,
Right.
then that, in practical, is probably not the same fixture where everything around it is not a spotlight that's going out to the water, and going to be seen. It seems to be a computer anomaly.
But it's in
As
the
a-
record, and we have to
Well,
approve it or not
we can
approve
fix
it, so I think you
Yeah.
need to go
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and talk to your lighting designer on how else you could present it.
And also, I think
Yeah,
because of the
I gotta
fact that
manipulate
times
all
you're
this.
seeing 0,
Right.
Yeah.
and at times you're seeing 66, I don't know that the planning
Yeah.
board knows what the actual
Right.
typical number is.
0 isn't right, and 66 isn't right.
It's more
It's-
manipulation
Right.
than a
Four.
real practice.
Because let's say it's, 5, and then maybe overlapping with other, lights that you're at points getting a higher number.
Instead of using
But
this particular
we just-
computer
There's just
program,
no,
what about going back to the averages? That is what we're used to seeing,
Okay,
and that
that's
will
what
give us
we'll
a
do.
comfot level that I
Yeah,
think will be a lot higher.
It's not a
Because
problem.
on the
Again,
averages, when you do see an anomaly, it usually is because there is
A
place,
confluence.
there is a.
Right.
Different fixture and a different.
Well, there's an issue that needs to be.
There's an issue.
Yes.
Not a
yes.
computer.
That's what
Right,
we're
not
used to
a
see.
glitch.
I promise, we've been doing this a while up here, many of us, and I'm used to being able to understand that. I don't understand this one. It just doesn't make any logical sense.
and it seems to be that one
Right,
fixture.
I know.
Yeah.
Do people and I'm just curious, do people on the other projects you've seen do them at such a small, on the grid, at such a small level, as 7 feet, 7 foot?
It,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're smaller sites, so it's easier to do.
5.
On a smaller site?
Can I ask a question? If we removed all these fun numbers from it, and you got this for each of the fixtures, you got a drawing like this that shows how the lumens distribute from each individual light
No,
fixture
you're supposed to show the schedule that you have right there, sorry, that's in our code.
onto the site plan.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, look, yes, we can do that. It's
Thank
a
you. Because
tedious
I want
thing.
this to go,
Because that's easier than going back
Yeah,
to
I
the
mean, guys, here,
manufacturer and
let
asking them.
me share with you, our goal is here, right? I think we've all seen the level of what we're trying to do on this site, right? We're not trying to light it up like a Christmas tree, so we're on the same page with you guys, so I understand on the record side, and
At
we'll
this point, it's
provide.
all about the record that we're
Understood.
keeping and voting
Understood.
on.
All right, thank you.
I just for the purposes of clarification for the average, you're just looking for the entire site, or you want them to break it down per sheet? No, because you do average.
Because there's other anomalies on there.
right.
You do average for the photometrics, so that's how you do it. I just want to make sure we get,
Want to see the numbers around the site.
We're used to seeing the grid
Wait,
with all the numbers on
And
it.
I think you still want to see the grid, right?
Yes, we want to see
Yes.
the grid
okay.
with the
They're
averages.
saying they want to see the grid.
Yes.
Yeah, so for each, so I believe he had about 7 sheets for the photometric plans that were submitted. So for each particular sheet, we would give you the average foot candles on that particular sheet,
On a grid.
on a grid, yes. Or with the grid, you calculate your average from that.
Well, normally you have that lighting schedule like you did on the first page, where
Correct.
it's the min, the max, and the average.
Exactly, I'm just saying but normally when you do something like that, it's per the particular, like, I'm used to doing it on like a site that's maybe like, say, 5 acres or
Yeah.
6 acres.
Right.
But how do you want to do it for a site where we've got a disturbance of 21 acres and
Each
we've got
sheet, it has its own separate,
Correct, I'm just wondering,
measurement, so that's what I was saying.
that's the best way to do that?
Right there.
Okay.
They can so they'll calculate the min, the max, and the average for each sheet.
For each sheet, I think is the
Okay.
cleanest way to do it.
Tad, does this sound like,
I don't know, I'm not a lighting
Makes sense.
this is a hard one.
All right, we got it.
But as is not anything that we can.
No. And
Tad said she would change the fixture.
I understand that, but I just want to provide clarification to the lighting consultant. I mean, normally we just do it for the whole area that we're looking at. We do the average, kind of like what you're saying on the sheet. So if that's acceptable, that's what we would convey to the consultant.
I mean, look, Rob said it well. I mean, if I take the bollard and I take the 7-foot grid and I go equally distant from the center of that light fixture, those are all going to be 2-foot candles. And that's going to be consistent everywhere, and that's what I'm going to do.
And that's what we're looking for.
I got it.
And in the few places where you might have an intersection or overlap.
I understand.
see
I don't look that smart, but I'm
No.
smarter than that.
Look, when LED went for fueling stations for the under canopy,
Yes,
the foot candles are way too high for what our code would be.
understood.
But, particularly when they combine, but when they go mellow out quickly, and we've allowed those because they're really just little hot spots, and sometimes they're actually aimed more toward like where a car would be and your fueling pump, that kind of
Yes.
thing. But we look at the average as well. So that's basically it. And I
That's
believe
what we-
also that Bonnie said that there was, Bonnie, in your memo, did you note that there were some places where light might be leaking off the site? I don't remember now, I thought, no, okay, good. Good, okay.
All right, thank
Thanks.
you. That's,
Do you want to move? It's up to
okay,
you.
yeah. Chris was going to address this issue of the phasing, staging, and some of the confusion that perhaps.
Good evening. So we submitted with our last documents a waiver to disturb more than 5 acres at any point in time, but no more than 10 acres. The drawing sheet C600 through C608, they were intended to show how the sequence of the implementation of the erosion and sediment control measures will take place during the course of these disturbances so that we do not exceed the 10 acres. They were not meant to be visualized as a sequence of how they will be requesting COs for their buildings. It was mainly just how they're going to implement the ground disturbance and then stabilize the ground. During the course of some of those phases, they will start some elements of construction of a particular building. So when you go to the preliminary build-out plan, the intention of that plan is to give you an indication of the sequence of when they're going to build the particular buildings on the site. That's what the preliminary build-out plan is intended for, is to show you where the buildings are being constructed and the future villas, and at what phase, and the fact that they may request a CO for the hearth building, the event building, the main components of the resort, prior to requesting a CO for some of the leasehold villas that may or may not be constructed. So I'm hoping that helps clarify what we tried to convey on our plans. And if it doesn't, I'm more than happy to have you mark up our plans so that it would be easier for you to, easier for me to address your concerns.
So my comment related to the parking. And I looked at the build-out plan because the response letter that responded to the comments said to look at the particular build-out plan sheet. So I wasn't concerned about the erosion control and the phasing because that's about the disturbances. So in looking at it, it appears, based on the build-out, that there's a concern about whether you're going to have sufficient parking meeting the demand for what is in, I believe it's Phase 2, which is your hearth building, the hotel area, and I think the spa. And so when you gave that great parking table now on one of the sheets, and you add up the parking compared to that particular stage, one of the stages relies on the stacker parking. And so I think we just all want to be clear that if you need the stacker parking for the hearth building, the amenity building, whatever's happening in that Phase 2, that's getting constructed. So the way it appears right now in that build-out plan is that the stacker on the build-out plan is still happening later.
Correct. It is happening later. It's...
Finish at the same time.
They finish at the same time, but the length of construction for the Hearth building and the event building is much longer than that of the Stacker building. So you would start those components in Phase 2, and then Phase 7 is when, and it's either Phase 6 or 7 is when they would start the Stacker construction.
So, and-
The stackers and the parking adjacent to the roadway, and a couple of those locations when we're coming around the bend, they will all be in place when seeking a CO for the main resort complex, the Hearth, the event building, the hotel, the spa.
So I think what might not be coming through clearly is that if that's the case, it sounds like that build-out plan is talking about sequencing in terms of when it begins. So the one is beginning earlier, but you just said may take longer.
Correct.
So I think that's what's not kind of built into that. And maybe there's a way of communicating it through a note. And again, the only point is to make sure that the parking's there when it's needed. And I'm sure you're considering that, but the way it's coming across on that build-out plan, because it looks like a sequence that this happens and it's done, and this happens, it's done, it's not quite reading right.
Okay, maybe what I can add is a clarification that the construction, the build-out of the structures associated with this phase may overlap with additional phases going forward, or something of that nature, just to show you that there's an overlap in the length of building.
Or maybe, because you're going to have a resolution at some point that you can't have a CO for, at some point until you have the parking for it.
That's easier.
I'm going to jump in here as well. It seems like you guys are mixing up phasing and construction phasing. And you're either going to get a CO on the whole site at once because you have one site plan, so everything needs to be constructed, which I spoke to Michael and Kate on a call with Pete about this staging issue. We've had several conversations. So if you want to get COs at different stages, like you want the Hearth and Event building and the parking at one stage, and then the back villas at a different stage, and then the front villas at this stage, you need separate site plans. And those are separate site plan approvals built into the larger site plan set. So when I first saw your staging plans, I was confused if they were site plan or construction phasing because of this CO conversation. So is the intention to get COs throughout the process?
Yes, the intention is to get COs throughout the process. Obviously, some of the leasehold villas may not necessarily be built prior to the Hearth and Event barn being built and operating. They may not have a particular client interested in a leasehold villa.
So you would need to break up the plan, a different site plan. So legally, you would have to have the Hearth and Event building as Phase 2. You'd have to have Villa 1 through 7 as Phase 3. You'd have to have the back villas as Phase 4. And then you can't get a CO, then you could get a CO on the whole site plan. So if you just make the Hearth and Event building one site plan, you'll get the CO on just that portion. And then you'll come back for Phase 3 with more details. And you could sketch out the plan and a construction phasing plan, but to actually get a CO, you're going to need a site plan that's completely constructed for the code enforcer to give you a CO.
I'm not sure that's,
Ted, how have we handled the phasing for River Ridge?
I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's,
River Ridge is sequential, so as the road went, the buildings went, the CO is issued on a segment, and then at the very end, the entire site plan gets reviewed, and we go back and we make sure all the trees are where they're supposed to be, and we get as-built surveys as we do the certificates of occupancy.
So essentially, it's phased that way.
It's
So a single
phased that
site plan.
way,
It's a
but-
single site plan, but it's been
it's not
phased.
different site plan, it's
But
phased.
it's one site plan, but it's easily segmented.
Yeah, exactly.
So everything associated with that building.
The road is a
in
C of O, the
place.
building's a C of O, and the, per phase, but the road is not a separate site plan, the building is not a separate site plan,
Right.
But that's not what I see when I look at the plan. So I guess that's my confusion.
I think we should have a discussion.
She was thanks for holding it for Tad. Vanna White there, yes.
Vanna White over here. So, again, we can like discuss this maybe separately, but as long as there's a phasing plan. Now, maybe I misunderstood, but are you talking about, I'll use the word hopping around from phase to phase? On the phasing plan that's in the set, are you talking about, okay, we may do like a little bit in this one phase, and then depending on the market, we may jump over here, do like half of this phase, and then we may go to like a quarter of phase like 5 or something like that? Because that's where I think there's going to be a problem.
For example,
Not where I think there is going to be a problem.
the build-out on sheet C-153, maybe if we can bring that up.
That's your quote-unquote phasing
The
plan.
preliminary build-out plan, that is for the intent of this plan is to indicate how we plan on constructing the structures on the site.
Right.
So in build-out phase 2, it includes the actual excavation and construction of the foundations and then the buildings themselves, the hotel, the hearth, and the event barn. The construction of those may last 24 months, but as the areas surrounding that become stabilized, they're going to move on to the next phase, which is build-out phase 3, which are the rentable villas around the loop road. They don't take as long to construct, but they may have the construction of some of those rentable villas taking place simultaneously while they're working on the hearth and event building.
Well, I don't know. I mean, can it be done? Sure. Sure that it can be done. It's just how do the plans get like presented so that the town can work with you to issue the COs that you'll be looking for, because, hopping around.
Well, it's not necessarily hopping around because they're going, in order, the hearth building, the hotel, the rentable, they're all going to hopefully obtain their COs almost simultaneously. And that's the way in which they're gauging their construction. These are the longest time for construction, so that's why they're being started initially. Then the other items, for example, the rentable villas, the spa, the greenhouse, that doesn't take as long to construct. Like the stackers don't take as long. That's something that's about a 4-month process.
Sorry to interrupt. I think what you're seeing is you build out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're looking at that sequentially. I think and maybe this is an idea, for build out 1, if we said month 1 to month 12. And build out 2 is month 1 to month 24. Does that help on the overlap of the?
That's not really the issue. The issue is your CO is based on your site plan.
I mean, I think we're not.
Phase a section of the site plan.
Sorry.
So go ahead, but you could phase a
I
section.
mean, we're not going to resolve this like tonight, but I think if we have, a meeting, whether it be virtually, so you guys don't have to come up, whatever's easier, but I think we need to have this because, I know that I've done a couple projects that are large scale. We had, phasing, 7 phases on one project, and there were certain areas where we designed it where you could interchange phase 3 with phase 4 if the market demanded, but we designed it so the infrastructure worked either way. And maybe that's the case here, but I think in order for the town to issue the COs and get you what you want, that the plans need to be, whether it's the phasing lines need to change a little bit, I'm not sure.
Lou was just asking a question. Do you guys have a TCO program? I mean, do you issue TCOs here? No? Okay. Sorry.
No, we used to, but guess what? They never came back with the real ones. So
Can't imagine. Can't imagine that.
Yeah.
And I think we've come full circle, because I think the issue you're talking about is when we finish phase 1 or phase 2, when you issue the C of O, you need to know before you issue the C of O do we have sufficient parking?
Right, as the
Do we have-
landscaping.
do we-
Yes.
Do we have landscaping?
Yes.
Right.
Do we have utilities? Do we have
Right.
water? Do we have
Right.
sewer?
Right,
Yes, the
exactly.
landscaping.
So
Yes.
that, so that I think
Yes.
that's what you're asking.
Yes, yes,
That
yes.
our building phases correspond to the other infrastructure needs phasing.
And what you're
So you
saying.
could be guiding and we could be guiding.
And what you're saying makes complete sense, that, okay, we want to do, the hotel or whatever it's called, and, the spa, whatever, yeah, Horace, thank you. And then,
Sorry, whatever it's called.
whatever it's called.
He's not the marketing guy.
And my-
Hospitality expert.
I'm glad I can provide some entertainment. But it makes sense to be able to, okay, if there's more of, if there's like a market over here now, we're going to want to do something over here. So I understand, the flexibility, and, you should have the
It
flexibility,
just has to
but,
be delineated, it just has
but we
to,
need to, but there's got to be some kind of like structure to the phasing,
Right.
and then, if you see the market like shifting and there's, something like major, maybe there's an amendment that has to be done during, I don't know. I mean, so,
On our sheets, C600 through C608, they talk about the installation of the infrastructure and the stabilization that takes place after that, which coincides with the build-out plan as well. So if you look at all 8 of those sheets together, and you see how the construction sequencing of the particular buildings are taking place, and they're noted in the land disturbance sheets, it talks about all the infrastructure that has to be in place during the course of a particular phase. So obviously, without that infrastructure, you can't get a CO.
so do your, and I think you talked about this, but I wasn't quite following it. Do your erosion control plans follow sheet 153, the preliminary build-out?
Correct. The only.
Well, I'm
intent
just
of-
asking, do
Yeah,
they or no?
They do. The only intent of this real plan here, and maybe this is the plan that's confusing everybody, because we were asked to do the 2 separate sets of plans. This was originally intended to give you an idea of the sequencing of how they were going to build the structures. That's when we prepared this original plan. And then we submitted for the 5-acre waiver with all the disturbance plans. And now we've got 2 plans that are both called phasing, which is creating, to me is, and I've said this in the beginning, I think it was going to be confusing by having both of them named phasing plans. So maybe it's best if we remove the build-out plan.
I don't know,
And
I
just
think we
work
have to
with
have
the
a separate
phasing
meeting, because we're not
plans?
going to resolve it
And
tonight.
I think that's where I got confused with phasing, because I saw it and I'm like, there's not enough detail on this to know
Right, no,
that you can
I
issue a
agree.
CO. So you need on each phase, whether you take that sheet and then you add detail, that's an option. You have to have a sheet that shows where every tree is, where the build-out is, where the road is. What's included, what's the light fixtures, and then a CO can be issued. And the reason I said, oh, are you doing it in site plan stages, is because this wasn't ready for that discussion. Because currently, as right now, you will only get 1 CO at the end with the way that you've drawn it. So they have to go back and add details to each phase. So that's what we're looking for, details for each phase of, like, if phase 2 is the hearth building, where the parking is, where the lights are. Like, that's what we're looking for each phase. And if you're not ready to do each phase, then you can come back and get site plans for those phases, which some applicants have done. Like, that's why I was asking to clarify.
Bellafield across the road is taking that approach. It's a much bigger project than yours, obviously, but that's what they're doing.
It seems to me the intent was, it seems to me the intent was that the build-out was more about your sequencing, not.
The build-out plan was only to give you an idea of the
That makes
particular structures.
Yeah,
That was
exactly.
asked for.
Not for the infrastructure, et cetera, but
Not
the
for
kind of the
infrastructure,
buildings and,
correct.
yeah.
And then, I don't know how much detail has, or the level of review that's taken place, but if you look at sheets C600 through C608, there are very detailed sequencing schedules that go with them, some of them about 40 lines that talk about the infrastructure and landscaping installations, like, and when particular landscaping is going to take place, because it makes sense. You know, you may do phase 3, but you're not installing the landscaping, you're stabilizing it, and then you're coming in doing phase 3 and 4, all the trees, because that's the loop road and in the hotel area, for example.
But does the town, and this is just a question because I don't know, does the town do C of Os on that? Because the C of Os are really about the buildings, aren't they?
No,
But
you guys
what-
are confusing us with the COs, because you're saying site plan is.
No,
CO
my.
Everything shown on the site plan, it's not confusing, I'm going to make it very clear for
Yeah.
you. Everything on the site plan must be installed, or you don't get a CO. It has nothing to do with the actual structure of the building or the construction, that it's all ready to go and you can move in and flush the toilet. That is not how you get the CO. It's everything that's pertinent to that as well.
But since I just want to ask this question, since they're individual structures, don't they become individual COs?
Tied to whatever is in that phase of the sub-plan.
Correct.
Site plan.
So somehow that build-out has to reflect whatever's going, I guess, around it to pull a COO for that building.
And it would need the associated parking, as Michael said. In other words,
So I
for example, on
I
River
think I
Ridge,
can.
just townhomes down the way. That's because that sequence,
Yep.
TAD can give a CO for a building when it's done because the landscaping's in and that section of the road is in.
Do we have a sheet, I think what I'm hearing is, there also needs to be a phasing of our C of Os. In other words, our C of O.
We want you to get your
Our
COs.
first C of O is
Yes.
going to be when we're done with phase 1 and phase 2. I'm hypothetical. And so that C of O for phase 1 and phase 2 are going to include all these infrastructures. We have it all. We'll have the parking, we'll have da-da-da-da-da.
The road.
Phase, yeah.
Curbing.
And the C of Os, and C of O means that we are allowed to occupy that building. And we're probably not going to get a C of O when we just finish the hearth alone, because we've got no parking, no utilities, so.
You are correct.
I
but
think
the-
that's what they're asking.
But since you're submitting separate building permits, ultimately you do get a separate COO for each structure because you're submitting a separate building permit.
So, the certificates of occupancy are signed by both the building inspector and myself. So they
Correct.
have to meet both standards, both site plan standards and building code standards.
Correct, but
So.
If you submit-
We both sign, you got nothing.
But it's kind of similar to like a house. Like, say, you go and you build a deck, and you go and you're doing a pool separately. You're submitting 2 separate building permits for it, correct? And then you would get 2 separate COs for it.
Wait, a house isn't a site plan. Let's go back for a step.
Well, no, what I'm talking about, not so much from a site plan, I'm just talking about from a building permit perspective. A building permit, you're submitting for a building permit, so you're getting a separate building permit for each structure. You would get a CO for each structure.
Unless TAD signs
once
it, you don't get the CO for each structure. Are you not understanding that?
I do understand that, but it's not one CO, it's multiple COs.
No.
Because
We're
you're
agreeing
multiple
with that.
buildings.
We're agreeing with that.
Depends
Can I
on what's
just-
included
can
in
I-
the
I
building
just
permit.
also wanted to clarify,
Sure.
that what we're trying to tell you is, the way it's currently laid out, it's one CO for everything, until you break it out into
Therefore, you'd have to finish everything.
For example, Ready Coffee is being built right now. It's under construction.
Correct.
If it's complete and they're ready to put coffee into it, unless the landscaping and the stone walls and everything else are there, TAD doesn't sign off. Don can sign off, but it's not a CO. It doesn't go anywhere until TAD signs it. That's what all this is about. That's all. I'm trying to help.
No, I get that. I guess I'm confused because we've got a lot of this language on the plan, so I'm not sure.
That's why I think the,
Yeah.
All right, we're going to resolve it.
putting
Yeah.
a
let me
sub-review
just-
together is the way to resolve, because we're not resolving it right now.
Let me just add one more thing. So, from a construction standpoint, let's just say like the villas, he's not going to just build one like villa. He's going to be contracted to build, what, 4, 5, 6?
So you hope.
So you're going to come in for building permits for 4, 5, 6 buildings all at one time. That's what we do up to River Ridge. They come in for 4 buildings, 3 buildings at a clip. You give them like building permits, they get the COs for all 3, 4, 5 buildings at one time. Tad and I go out and make sure all the landscaping's in for those 3 or 4 or 5 buildings. The lighting's in, it's seeded, mulched,
Parking, the
landscaped.
Utilities are in,
Boom,
parking
done.
is available.
So,
Correct.
you're not going to just do one building and get a CO, next building, you're going to, I'm just talking about, you know, like villas. Maybe the bigger buildings, you know, you will, because that's kind of separate.
Correct.
But for, you know, the residential like villas, right, I mean, tell me if I'm
No,
wrong.
you're right, but it also could be one. I mean, it all depends on the market.
Of course, it's what
It could,
The villas are the ones that are gonna be the variables. The rest of the complex, everything on the west side is virtually gonna be one. I don't know how you can operate a lot of that unless all of it's done.
you can't operate plus the stackers and maintenance buildings.
So we can get building
could
permits,
be as
we
simple
won't
as
get
2
COs.
phases.
We might complete a building.
We may only
just
have
won't
two.
Okay, so I think we solved some of it, but let's get together on a separate, because we could be here, we could be here. And I told my wife that this would be a short meeting. And I didn't eat before I came.
Cassandra,
No, I'm only kidding.
Mr.
Whatever.
Zarin, I think the first thing to me would be to involve somebody from construction, but for the attorneys to get together to understand this, and then come up with a formula or format that you think both of you sides agree upon for how they can get COs as you go
Yeah,
through
but
the process.
no
That's
offense to
basically-
the attorneys in the room, but I think that, you know, Tad and myself are just as important in that discussion, because we're the ones that go out and inspect and,
But I want
you
the
know-
lawyers to understand.
I understand.
Because
I understand.
we're talking about nomenclature, phraseology here, words.
Right.
That's what's been confusing everybody. So if there needs to be new wording used, subphase, I don't care what it is, there's a way we can make the distinction so that Tad has a comfort level that when Don says here, it's past my inspection, because all he does is look to see building code, that's it. Tad has to do the rest, and that's when Tad and Pete go out. So if there's a way that that process can continue, that it works for you, that's what we want to get to.
I think we got it.
And we want it to work
And I
for you
think we
guys. We
should,
don't-
Pete,
we don't-
you're going to be chair and co-chair, the two co-chairs of that committee are going to be Pete and Tad. We're going to be the minions. I'm going to supply the donuts, and, you know, all the verbiage.
Saki?
23.
23.
23. Unless you want a fruity. We'll go to 35. All right, I think we got it.
We have one more issue, parking. We've done fire department phasing not finished. We've discussed lighting. You're going to change how you're measuring it to show us something. Parking. It's in Bonnie's memo. You have very short drives in some of the
We
villas.
got Bonnie's memo an hour ago.
Sorry.
So I'll
It was still draft.
summarize.
It was still draft, yes.
So you did cover all the parking, and I just wanted to confirm with the villas that there are 2 parking spaces for each villa. And I wasn't concerned as much about the bigger villas, but the ones that are they're next to each other, they're on the main drive coming in. I think they're LHs.
Yeah, so
So do they have a garage?
they all have garages, so you
Okay.
have one space in the garage and one space in the driveway.
Okay, can we just add a note that they're all having garages on the,
Okay,
where you
we
had the
can add that to
parking
the bulk
table?
table.
Yeah, so the
That parking table.
villas are supposed to, so you actually didn't include the villas? Because I think you said 2 per villa, but just,
Correct.
yeah.
We
But
could
just
put that
mention
note on there.
the garage for the other ones. And then I suggest, as part of the resolution, some of those drives are pretty short, and if you're out there, maybe you want to move the buildings 2 or 3 feet, only to the extent it doesn't go into an easement area or whatever. A little bit of flexibility, if necessary, to give yourself a little bit more length on your parking
We came up with
areas.
this because
You like that?
I'm sure you do.
like flex.
If we build this, Tad has the ability, what was that, 2 years into the planning board? The way the code was written before, if a building was 4 inches off where it's supposed to be, Tad had to send them back for site plan amendments. So Tad has the ability to determine de minimis for any variations.
In the field.
It's better to build it in so that there's this much variation allowed in advance to a max, and to make a note that it can't go into environmentally sensitive areas, et cetera. That way, when you get out in the field, Scott, you're going to have, no, you'll need that too, because, I mean, a lot of these things are designed using topo maps, that's all, so.
Once you're there.
Yeah, once you're there, it may be a little bit different. Ann and I never forgot, early on in our career here, up here, we had a house, and we insisted on doing a site visit.
subdivision,
Yep,
yeah.
and when we got there, there was a spring emerging right in the middle of where the house was, and the engineer said, no, that's not true, and I went, Really?
Except his flag was right there, so, well,
Whoever flagged it.
Yes, whoever
Anyway, he went out and he goes, well, son of a gun. I'm like, yeah. Again, that was caught in advance from a site walk, and it was much, well, it wasn't much smaller, but at any rate, but that's, we can build that in a note. If Tad's comfortable with it, that's the important thing. And that could be, as I said, added into a note on the map as well as within the resolution itself.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Just so you're aware, Bonnie, we looked at that on our last submission, and we provided a minimum of 22 feet
Okay.
between the curb line and the building for parking of a car. So
Okay.
obviously, typically, they do 18
I
in a
think it was-
parking lot, so we have some that are, we have them at 22 minimum.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but sometimes because of the way the roadway was curving and the driveways were coming in, one was shorter than the other.
Correct.
I was a little concerned some of them, again, are short, so I'm just suggesting to build in flexibility for you all to make them a little longer if it's needed.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know, we addressed your comments you had last time, because we did shift the building slightly, just to make sure we had that 22 feet minimum throughout.
Thanks.
Okay.
Can, buy anything?
No, so I would say that those were the highlights, I mean, the main substantive points.
Something about soil and landscaping?
Oh, just standard notes, but I think those we can fix.
Making condition of approval.
Yeah, one of them had to do with soil depth, because there may be bedrock, is there enough?
Their
in it?
response was that they changed the landscaping to accommodate for shallow swell areas.
Yeah, and I didn't know, because I thought it said something about detail, but I didn't see a detail, so, but again, I think these are things that can be resolved as part of, right before signing the
And let's
plat.
be honest, in a site this size, if there's something proposed in your landscaping that's not available, you can always propose a substitution in advance. Because we've already seen many a time where there's a variety that this is what we want, or what the applicant wants, and we agree, and then that was not available anywhere. So it's a shift sometimes in, specific varieties within the species. So, but yes, we can add that note. This has been such a back and forth. Let me start over again here. Bonnie, is that anything else?
No, I think otherwise you have the comments and, it might be cleanup or additional clarification, but the big picture items you've addressed.
Yeah. Ms. Moss, any comments, additional comments?
One thing we haven't talked about is a final survey, and there's always a final survey after construction, so we'll have to figure out where those areas are, and maybe that's how we define the phasing. Maybe the phasing develops as we move. I don't know.
That's why we need to have this offline meeting. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sotero? Yeah, as-built.
Just a couple things. I'll start looking at the plans I haven't yet. I'll look at them over the weekend, and then, so at least I'll be prepared whenever we have this meeting, hopefully next week. So the other two things is, I did not look at, the lighting because, Bonnie's doing that, but have had some experience, with bollards, and I don't know the type of fixture, whether it's like emits light out, or it's got a little hat on it.
It has a hat on it. Yeah, they're not.
It doesn't make sense why it's.
Okay.
It just doesn't with this light.
Because I know, and you're not going to see it like tonight, because it'll be light when you guys leave anyways. But we did some nice bollard lights down where we built the sidewalk by Farm Lane across from, the Stop and Shop, and,
oh yeah, those are.
Going to the.
oh, they're the same ones, right? Oh, yeah, you did that.
Yeah, along the sidewalk, though.
Yeah.
And
Okay, copy.
we had
And those weren't,
Desai do the same
Yeah.
bollards to continue it on.
they
as
weren't, they weren't overly like bright.
No, I remember, I can find the lighting plan on those bollards for the Saki.
No, I know, I mean, I live over by Vassar College, so when they did the roundabouts, and they did all that, like, work through Raymond Avenue there at each of the crosswalks that they had there, they had, like bollards in there, and they didn't have, the hats on them. You have the hats, so, but they were so bright that and they were at eye level in like a car. Within about a month, they took them all out, but anyways, so you're not, that's not what you're using. Got it. So the other thing that I was thinking about that we should talk about is how we're going to craft a condition around the railroad, because I know there's an issue there with the railroad, and I don't know how they factor into, this whole, process, so.
How do we leave it? We were going to get that out. Some blasting.
Yeah, we put notes on the plans.
Notes on plan about notification of any.
So when we get
blasting,
together,
monitoring.
let's just make sure that we touch on that, so that when we get time,
Yeah, we talked about this.
Okay.
Just a reminder that the owner, CSX, if it's still CSX, whatever, has no indirect or direct involvement in this project. There's no permit, there's nothing that they grant, there's no anything. So as far as I'm concerned, the fact that you discuss this with when you're writing notes, it means that the liability would pass on to you if there's something there.
And I'm all right, and I'm fine with that, as long as we're all on the same page and we think that we're covered, that's
I
fine.
thought that, I do believe that if we thought that there was going to be a disruption to train service, that would be so extreme, that might be a bigger issue. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here. It would be something that would cause problems later on down the line from fissures, whatever, I think. And
Okay.
don't use that word. Anything else, Pete? No. It's a good point, though, so I think you guys should address it. Ms. Britton, comments?
Nothing else.
Thank you. Let me start to my left. Mr. Waters, any additional comments?
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Wasser?
No, but I'll thank Cassandra for her first step up tonight for raising the issue.
Ms. Dexter?
Nothing here.
Mr. Oliver?
Nothing new to add.
And Mr. Garcia?
None for me.
Nothing from me either, because we're hitting on these points and we need to just resolve them. Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application or address the board? If not, we'll adjourn this to May 15th?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is the board going to, probably using the wrong word, I apologize, but direct the preparation of a resolution for conditional site plan approval?
The resolution is already under preparation.
Great.
It may not be ready for May 15th because it depends on what your lighting plans look like.
I'll take care of it.
A lot of pressure.
And
Okay, we got it.
And phasing.
And phasing.
And phasing.
Late nights.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Literally, we can't approve plans with that kind of hotspot in there. Even if it doesn't look like that in real life,
Got it.
it would be permitted, in other words. And honestly, 68-foot candles would pretty much be blinding. That's why I don't think it's going to happen, but
You can see on the spec, it's a mistake.
it has to be.
right now it's showing, it's like 5, so I think it's a
Unless you had the sun harness down there for you.
It's got to be right on the pole.
That's,
This is where things goes inside one of those. We're working on marketing renderings of the restaurant, just so you guys get a sense of where we're going with some of the interior design stuff. So you can have a nice dinner and if you want to buy one of these, that's anyway. Gotta get a CO first.
so, may I get a motion to adjourn to May 15th?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions?
May
Be sure,
15th.
go down and take a look at Bellafield on your way home. Go look at the bar.
Yeah.
Look very carefully at the bar area.
Go to the bar.
Yeah.
That's
There's a reason why I'm
the
saying that.
advice of the chair, go to
There's
the
a reason why I'm
bar.
saying that. Take a look at the bar and see if there's anything that you see that you might not want to replicate at your own place. Hint, hint.
This is like a riddle.
Yeah, it's a riddle.
Sphinx.
Go to the bar.
It's a riddle wrapped in
Just
mystery.
take a look at the bar, take a look at the area around there. Now, granted, that was not supposed to be a restaurant, and they serve bar bites, would include risotto, not in a small cup. So it's a restaurant. But just take a look through there and see what you think. Thank you. We'll see you in 2
He
weeks.
enjoys their french fries. He enjoys their french fries.
We're going on the record? All right. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is authorizing Ms. Moss to issue a sign permit for Hudson Valley chimney signage.
And we have
What?
Hudson Valley chimney here.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here for this. Now I
Yes.
recognize you, yes. You didn't have
Father's
to,
here too, but.
you didn't have to be here. We got the you're the guy sitting on the chimney pipe, aren't you?
And Sooty Rob.
That is I.
So, just for everyone's edification, this does require that we grant the increase in size for the two images for aesthetic merit. As Ms. Moss pointed out, this was actually up before.
It was up before and it was taken down. Now we're just putting the same sign back.
Back up.
Oh,
So,
okay.
anybody have any questions for City Rob?
He answered my question.
No
While
light.
you're here, be sure to sit down for a second and talk about the range of services that you offer.
Sure.
Remember, this is televised, and I always like to have our local businesses talk about what they do.
Yeah.
So we've been in business since 1976. We're on Route 9, as many of you know, right across from Stewart's is where our office is. We offer anything from, typical chimney sweeping, chimney repairs, rebuilding your chimney, brick, block, masonry repairs, lining. We do install wood stoves, pellet stoves, gas appliances as well. So anything fireplace related, anything chimney related is what we do every day, and we're the best around. So
I appreciate you saying all that, and we like to help long-term businesses. To be business-friendly doesn't just mean to welcome new businesses, it means helping those who have been here for a
Yeah.
long time, too.
So we've been in Hyde Park ever since my father purchased it, and then I took it over, so.
Great.
Not going anywhere.
Great. I believe this is your resolution.
It
Anybody have
is.
any other questions? Okay.
Resolution recommendation for issuance of sign permit and relaxation of the standard symbol size. Resolution number 2024-16. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby recommends the zoning administrator issue the sign permit for Hudson Valley Chimney as submitted by Hudson Valley Properties LLC.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Got your sign?
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank
you.
Nice to see you guys.
Be up tomorrow. Very good. Thank you. Have a great night.
By the way, I didn't look carefully at that shirt. I thought, well, we have some observers over here who want to see the meeting. I would have told you you didn't have to stay. I apologize.
It was interesting learning about that.
And you got a commercial.
That's it.
There you go.
And by the way, they'll be your neighbors. The next item on the agenda is a request for site plan waiver for a rear pool deck located at 21 Cromwell Place. This is in the statewide area, scenic area of statewide significance. The zoning administrator has recommended that we grant the site plan waiver as requested because it's not really readily visible from either the historic sites or the river. Anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Mr. Oliver, this is yours.
21 Cromwell Place, Hyde Park, New York, resolution number 2024-15, whereas a request for site plan waiver has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Karen Perry to construct an above-ground pool deck associated with a single-family home. And whereas, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the proposed changes as described in the building permit dated April 4th, 2024, and associated site plan waiver received by the Planning Department April 17th, 2024.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm recused for the moment because the next application is for me.
Just vote no. The next resolution is to consider as a recommendation by the zoning administrator to grant a site plan waiver for a standby generator at 30 Curry Lane in the scenic area of statewide significance. I believe Rob has this one.
Yes, I have this one. Michael Fletcher and Michael Dupree, 30 Curry Lane, Hyde Park, New York. Site plan waiver, resolution 2024-12, whereas an application requesting a waiver of site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Michael Fletcher and Michael Dupree on April 4th, 2024, for the property they own located at 30 Curry Lane in the Town of Hyde Park. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the file entitled Dupree and Fleischer regarding the specific request received April 4th, 2024, and as identified in the building permit application dated January 10th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No abstentions? Motion carries. Where'd he go?
Michael,
You can pass that down when you want.
denied.
I almost did it.
For you.
Thank you all very much. The next item on the agenda is we got a lead notice agency from Dutchess County Water and Wastewater. This is for the repair and renovation of the Quaker Hill water system. This is a neighborhood that's located obviously off of North Quaker. And it's a pretty big neighborhood once you go in.
Yes.
For those of you who might not know it automatically, there's a burned house at the entrance right now. At any rate, I actually had a meeting with Mr. Keating and Bridget independently of this, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't sign the consent forms and we do seeker on the. Everybody agree? So can I get a motion to authorize me to sign to say that we have no objection to them serving?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Then we had a referral from the town of Rhinebeck for
Yeah.
a local law to amend their chapter 125 for short-term rentals. We don't have to respond.
I wasn't clear on that whole thing.
They're, basically what they're doing is they're going to make, if you want to do an Airbnb type business, the owner of the site has to live there and must stay there while it's being an Airbnb, either in the principal house or an accessory structure.
I will put the kibosh on it.
So it's like a B&B.
It's, there's some.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Would anyone like for us to send a response letter, basically just saying, we note this, this, and this, because essentially, I shouldn't be saying this in the record, but it may be that Rhinebeck does not want short-term rentals because, or at least wants to prevent companies, say from California or wherever, buying these and then just taking them out of the single-family market. There would seem to be an attempt by, it's going to be the owner having to stay there, that would be an attempt to make it more like, almost like a bed and breakfast than an Airbnb. But if you guys want me to, I'll be happy to
If you
write a
have
letter.
comments, absolutely, yes.
Then let me write it up and get it back to you guys
Yeah.
for the next meeting. And I think that's it.
That's a motion, right?
It's a motion. Yes.
I'll make the
And-
motion.
Second.
There you go.
All in favor, please say aye. No, this
Aye.
authorizes me to write it. And the last item on the agenda was the local law for special standards for cannabis establishments. We met, or I met Monday? Taz, help. We met Tuesday, okay. I met Tuesday with Attorney Ariel for the town board, Emily Svensson, who's assisting us in the review, and Tad, and looked at the original local law you saw. I want to thank everybody for their comments, because they were more generalized, but they more or less focused on what we did. What we also noticed is that it seemed to be overly regulatory in ways that go beyond what the state allows. The state's very specific that you can't increase the distance from certain kinds of uses, i.e. schools, churches, et cetera, that it must, and you can't really treat this cannabis retail as some sort of exotic, different business. You can add certain other standards and requirements on it, particularly location. But at any rate, the law is being rewritten based on comments that I provided, Emily provided, and my comments included some of what Ann provided, everybody. So we'll have a new version of that. It'll have to be formally recirculated to us and to county planning. They're hoping to have that done by, I believe, the 13th to reintroduce it. So, but we'll have another pass at a different kind of law. Any questions?
Yeah, Michael, did you discuss the fact that throughout all of this, the town is issuing licenses, and New York State's really clear that the town can't do that.
Correct.
That we can only, that all we can do is do time, place, and manner.
That's basically it.
There's another thing in here that says, cash shall be prohibited for cannabis delivery. Who's enforcing this?
That was a discussion that we had that day.
Just the whole thing is so unenforceable, and I'm just.
Or the odor. How do you manage the odor?
But the whole thing is, New York State regulates all of that. They take care of all of those issues. To me, it's just like a liquor store. We just say where they can put it and what their hours of operation can be, and if there's anything special, but at this point,
And honestly, I don't even know if you could call DoorDash and say, go pick me up something at the cannabis retail.
No, but the applicant.
It's legal now.
But the applicant did say that he was going to be doing deliveries.
Yes.
but why would anybody in this town go following them to see if they were getting paid in cash? Just the whole industry.
They're
you
also
can't
required
even-
right now to have a copy of the, whatever the,
Whatever the.
Site
but the
plan
other
approval
thing
or
is,
license, et
At the federal
cetera.
level, you can't use credit cards to actually purchase this.
That is true.
It is a cash business. This is, I read this and I said, what the?
I'm not an attorney, I'll just enforce whatever it is that they adopt.
Well, you may be spending the rest of your life in enforcing just this.
Where are they putting the cell in?
We're going to relabel her title as Chief Cannabis Officer.
Chief Cannabis Officer Tad Moss.
CCO.
CCO?
Chief Cannabis Officer, yeah.
I love it. Anyway, I'm glad that they're rewriting it, because it just blew my mind. I said, oh, you
It
kidding
was
me?
pretty complicated. It was pretty complicated,
And
so.
it's going to open us up for lawsuits.
And unmanaged.
Yes.
It helps.
When I looked at the delivery, my first thought was, well, do we make the people at Domino's carry a copy of their CO when they go deliver? I mean, essentially, the delivery function is a delivery function. It's kind of post what the planning board reviews, except to look at traffic impacts, that's all.
Is there not an age limit on who can buy it?
But New York State
Yeah.
regulates
So how
all
can
of
you
it.
deliver it?
New York State regulates all of it.
No, but how can you make a delivery on cannabis? Says who approves the driver?
That's between New York State, that's
on the
all part of
business.
their, that's not.
Presumably you'd purchase it in advance, like online, so it'd be
Yeah.
sold already, and then they would deliver it to you. And getting it, they have to, anytime you buy in the state law, you have to show your license. You must
Yeah.
always show a license, and it needs to be, I think, not recorded, but they, on the camera in the state law, you have to show what's being purchased each time. It's somehow recorded on,
They'll probably do something like Amazon does, where when they do it, they have to take a picture and do all of this stuff
Yeah.
and document each sale.
Yeah, I don't think the
But it-
town
You
should be
have
in
to
that.
sign for it.
Yeah.
You probably have to
But
sign
we're-
for it.
But we're trying to, but they were trying to, it was in here.
No, I was reading it, I read it, it was
It's
just.
just like, are you kidding?
Do they deliver alcohol?
well, I
You
had.
have to sign
Yes.
for it, though,
You
right?
have to sign for it if you're an adult. I mean,
And they kept
delivery,
the
do you
laws
include
open.
delivery like ordering from, say, Empire Wine in Albany and getting it by UPS? That's a delivery as well.
Probably has to be a safety sealed envelope or whatever they're shipping it in.
Wine of the month.
Yeah, flavor.
That's right, why not?
Okay, let's
I will say,
No, I mean, none of that has
in
anything to
response
do
to
with.
some of those comments, that if there is a problem, the easiest way to prosecute is to have a paperwork violation.
That's true.
So it's not necessarily that I'm going to be standing there looking for papers, but if there's a problem, that's the first thing you go with, is your paperwork.
Right.
So I understand why it's in there.
Okay.
It's already taken, Chuck.
Our CCO, Chief Cannabis Officer.
CCO.
Stay away from it.
Marijuana.
Okay, everyone, I think we're getting a little bit silly now.
The
Yep.
sun is still up over.
May I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you to the town board, as always, providing the resources to televise this meeting. Thank you, Tony. Thanks, consultants, as always, and thanks to my wonderful colleagues for all the work you do.
Thank you.
All right.
But,